Hi, everybody. This is Steve Bennett. My guest today is Zoe Frank. Zoe received a certificate in drawing painting from the Gage College of Art. Do they call it college, Zoe, or academy?
It's an academy. Yeah,
All right.
it's not a degree granting program.
A Gage Academy of Art in 2011, and then in 2014, Zoe went on to get an MFA in painting from the Laguna College of Art and Design in California. Her work, which is almost difficult to describe and defies characterization, I would characterize as a combination of figurative and still life with a focus on atmospheric interiors and multi-person gatherings, for example, parties, weddings, and parades, all of which she has documented in her work. Zoe has received numerous awards and honors, including multiple Elizabeth Greenshields Foundation grants, a Hudson River Fellowship, and multiple honors from the Art Renewal Center. Your work has been featured in High Fructose Magazine, Fine Art Connoisseur, American Art Collector, as well as John Seed's important book, Disrupted Reality. In addition to your work as an artist, Zoe has been named one of 4 jurors for the 3rd iteration of the Bennett Prize for Women Figurative Realist Painters, the call for entries for which is now open. Zoe, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm happy to get to chat with you.
Delighted that you're here. We were just about to launch into a discussion, and I didn't want to miss the chance to record it, but you're just back from Italy, as I would understand it, right?
Yeah, that's true. I just got to spend 5 weeks kind of mainly in Rome, but also looking kind of down in Naples in southern Italy, just getting to look at a lot of paintings, which was so good after the last couple of years of the pandemic, not getting to travel as much.
So when you say you looked at paintings, did you do all the big museums? Did you go to Florence?
Yeah, I went up to Florence for a weekend. Yeah, did all the kind of major museums, and it was nice to be in Rome that long. I was able to do kind of the second tier of museums. There's all these kind of villas that have paint, that are kind of hung salon style, and some of them have only 4 rooms, and some of them have 20 rooms. But they all have like a Caravaggio in them, and these kind of really major, a kind of variety of different qualities of painting, but some real standouts.
Well, that
was great.
Fills the soul to go to Italy and see work. Did you have a particular painting artist or museum that you'd like to recommend to people listening and watching?
One thing that was really fun was when I've gone before, I focused more on kind of Renaissance painting. And this time I looked at a lot of the like early Roman frescoes and mosaics. So the Archaeological Museum in Naples has like the best collection of early frescoes. And then there's the museum in Rome, I'm forgetting the name right now, but it has the villa of, that's this kind of surrounding, this room that's just a surround of a garden. That's just incredibly beautiful. So spending more time with those things was really fun. We also went to Pompeii and Herculaneum, and it just felt like this kind of like treasure hunt for frescoes. You're walking through these ancient ruins and finding these 2,000-year-old paintings on the walls, just in all these nooks and crannies. It's just so cool.
I love Pompeii. I loved Herculaneum. I did find the plaster casts of the deceased that were made from the voids in the sand when they excavated to be fascinating, and I guess I would say a little creepy. I
was expecting there to be more of that. There was just like one room where they had some of those casts, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, right. But I was on a treasure hunt for frescoes and mosaics, and kind of, finding the other parts interesting, like how those old Roman roads were built. The kind of 2,000-year-old fast food restaurants where they have these big pots where people could come up and get some, soup for lunch or whatever. That part's kind of interesting. And then there'd be these kind of highlights of these really incredible fresco paintings.
Well, in visiting Pompeii, I thought that some of the frescoes in the villas and slave quarters were racy, for lack of a better phrase. There was some racy work there, apparently to encourage procreation among the enslaved people. But a lot of that work was truly remarkable. The level of execution was quite high when you consider the fact that Pompeii is basically a village in the boonies, relatively speaking.
Yeah, a lot of these were kind of middle class homes and stuff, and they're just incredibly decorated. It's, yeah, really different.
So, when you study the art history of Italy and Etruria, the Etruscan art, and the ancient Romans, they struggled a lot in the early days with perspective. They didn't know how to do it, weren't quite sure what to do, but you can see Cimabue in particular struggles with how to get three-dimensionality in the work. The early work is very flat.
I've been thinking about it differently, like the way that I was taught art history and thought about it, when I was kind of going through school, was this like progression that sort of like that things, they were struggling and they weren't getting it. And then by the time they got to the Renaissance, like that was like the height, and that's when things got really good and they figured it all out. And lately I've been so much more interested in looking at it as like they had just different interests, and that like linear perspective is a really like artificial, it's not actually how we see, it's not reality. It just creates this kind of convincing synthetic space that our brains kind of think looks really real, but it's just like a different way of kind of superimposing another structure over things. And those kind of early Roman paintings, or like a Cimabue, like they're just interested in something different. And I'm just loving those early paintings now in a way that I wasn't able to appreciate them before, because I felt like they were always just like the precursors to the good stuff. And now I'm like, oh, like these weird spaces that are created in a Giotto painting, where things are like, things do move back in space, but they're these kind of strange structures that are that don't move back, kind of, yeah, but they're just so wonderful. It feels like they're kind of built for the people. Like if a person is sitting down, the ceiling will be kind of lower, and if they're standing up, the ceiling will be higher, because they just need enough space to fit the people in. It's like these spaces that are like built as paintings, rather than having this kind of pre-built architecture that the figures are kind of placed into. And I'm just in love with these things right now. So that's
well, it can influence your work positively, for sure. Giotto, I spent some time in my art history life studying Giotto, and I was always interested that it wasn't like he or any of his contemporaries created an architectural space that was true and then populated it with people that were then made to fit the space. Rather, they created the people, and then the space fits the people.
Yeah, they're so wonderful that way.
Well,
I just love those spaces. They're so quirky, and they're like kind of decorated, and they're just these, like, they're just like human size. They're like sized exactly to the people in those specific poses in that specific painting.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. It's fascinating how there doesn't seem to be any commitment to, in Giotto's work, the angles all seem askew to me. There's no commitment to conceptualizing the picture plane as having right angles in the four corners, and then going back from there to, as you say, linear perspective to an infinity point. Today we would find an infinity point, extrapolate back to the picture plane, create the architecture, and then populate it with figures. So much of what Giotto did looks utterly intuitive, seems to me.
Yeah, they feel they feel very like inhabit, like they're kind of like more based on like how we touch things and experience things when we're kind of living in the world than this kind of removed, you know, kind of picture onto another, you know, into a separate space.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're walking through a space, like you're not usually seeing a table from one angle. You're seeing it from a kind of crooked perspective. You're seeing things from these strange, you know, and you're kind of moving through the space. So things are kind of shifting and moving. And yeah, there's something that just feels very kind of present about those in a way that's really wonderful.
I agree with that. The Renaissance and the pre-Renaissance and the ancient Romans, we could spend hours on that. Before we get trapped in there, though, maybe one thing I think we fully expect this podcast to be of interest to contestants for the Bennett Prize. So usually I like to focus on paths and how people became successful as artists and this sort of thing. And so one of the questions that I think I'd like to ask is, you're very successful, but you didn't graduate from high school as a finished artist. Illustrate, please, your path from where you realized you were going to become an artist and then in fact became one, and then honed your craft to the point of the mastery that you occupy today.
Yeah, I kind of drew and made stuff growing up. That was always an interest of mine. I was an only child and would spend my time kind of playing in the basement, just like making little, you know, making things and listening to audiobooks. And that's basically what I'm doing still. So that's pretty lucky. But at my school in 7th grade, we had a kind of unit about Renaissance painting. And that was when, so I was like 13 and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a painter. Those guys seem pretty cool. And that was looking at those kind of Renaissance, you know, Raphael, Michelangelo, kind of Leonardo, that kind of thing. And
one look at Leonardo and you were hooked, huh?
I was hooked.
Titian, and the next thing you know, you've got your.
They just seemed like gods or something, and it was like, gosh, how are they making these things? It just seems so incredible, and wanted to try and figure that out. So then when I was looking at colleges, I didn't have great guidance at the time. Like the university programs that I was seeing seemed very conceptual, and I was wanting to learn how to be like a Renaissance painter. So I ended up not applying to any of those. And I went to like a liberal arts college for a year and a half and kind of was starting to get some general education stuff. And then I dropped out and found Juliet's Atelier program, which felt kind of like the closest to getting to, you know, get to be an assistant in Raphael's studio, which was my fantasy. And that was just great. I spent 4 years there kind of learning these fundamental, you know, kind of foundational tools of how to draw and paint and how to, I think about it that I actually spent basically 4 years learning how to paint a single object under a single light source. So just like learning how to like turn form, make something round, and paint it accurately. Which, you know, after leaving that program, I'm realizing that there's just so much more to creating paintings than that. But that was a really useful kind of set of skills to really kind of get under my skin in a real way. So then
do you think, I'm always interested in this. It is my impression that most university art departments and programs really are populated by people who do not know how to paint.
That was my impression at the time. I think now I'm much more interested in those programs. Like I feel like that conceptual side of things is actually really valuable. And there actually are a lot of people who do know how to draw and paint in those programs. I think you have to just look for them and people who are thinking about thinking about making work in really interesting ways. But when I was, 18, that was not what I was interested in.
Well,
and I think,
don't you have to learn how to paint before you can be conceptual?
I think it was helpful for, like, I think, I don't know if you have to do it in that order, but for me, that was great. I think I wanted those skills first, and then was able to kind of broaden out from there a little bit more. But there's some really exciting painters, doing interesting work out there that don't have that kind of, atelier training and aren't in that, kind of realistic spatial manner, but are creating just beautiful compositions and complicated images and things that are
there's no question about it. And I don't mean to hold out realism is the only thing that you can do. But if you're going to hold yourself out as an art department, you have to have somebody on your faculty who can teach someone how to paint realistically, or you have shorted the student, I think.
Yeah, it seems like, having some, some life drawing and some of that kind of basic skills does seem really useful, and it's certainly what I wanted.
Okay, so Gage Academy.
So that was wonderful. 4 years of just getting to draw and paint full time. It was great, and not have to like think about any, like I didn't have to think about like what kind of artist I wanted to be, what I wanted to paint, or what I wanted to say. It was just like settling down and really slowly learning how to organize, get my values correct and get the perspective correct and get the proportions correct, and just really getting to kind of focus on one aspect of making the work at a time.
So then you went right on to MFA school, did you not? Pretty much.
I took a year off and then went on to the MFA. Yeah. And that was great too. I really got a lot out of it. Just having kind of feedback from more different people was helpful. I had just been studying with one person, so I had this one voice in my head, and just getting to hear like a bunch of perspectives and getting different feedback on the work was really useful to kind of shake up how I was thinking about things.
So after Gage and your MFA, you take a year off between your MFA, between Gage and the MFA, and then you hunker down and you start to paint. Tell us what was that like? What's it like to? I've always operated upon the assumption when I write, you sit and you either look at a blank page or a blank screen, and there's a certain degree of abject terror that this expanse of white creates. So now you're fully trained up, you've taken your year off, you're now got an MFA, you face this blank canvas. Tell us about that.
I think it was good training from both of those programs that I just went in and I painted from 9 to 5 every day. Just kind of all the way through. That's just how I worked. And so I was, when I left, I also, I got a studio, and I just, like, I the first year out, I actually clocked in and clocked out on a spreadsheet every day to make sure I was getting in my like 40 hours per week. So just like going to work, and this is my job, and I need to just put in the time. And then it doesn't really matter what happens while I'm there, like what painting I'm working on.
So
but the other way
that discipline's essential, is it not?
I think that was really helpful for me. And then the other part was like when I'm coming up to, like, I guess one painting kind of leads to the next, and I like in each painting, there's like things that work and things that don't work. And I'm like interested in trying out those things that worked in a different way and trying a different approach to the things that didn't work. So I never feel like I have this kind of just blank canvas. I feel like I'm on this pathway of investigation. And so each project is kind of leading to the next project. And now as I'm, finishing up one thing, I'm like thinking about like, oh, this is what I want to try out in the next painting. So I'm not just sort of staring at the wall. And that shit, like the work that I was doing at Gage, that year after Gage, it was the work I was doing was pretty similar to the work that I was doing at Gage. It's kind of like just one, these little like small steps out from there. And then my work kind of shifted while I was in the MFA, and I started on this path of investigation that's been kind of leading me to where I am now. But I was kind of, the paintings were leading from one to the next while I was there, and then when I left, I still had this kind of set of things that I was exploring that I think also, just kind of kept me going, which was really helpful.
Well, I think Dr. Schmidt and I own a couple of your early works.
From when I was in the MFA. That was when I met you, or you got in touch with me and
sure
paintings while I was there.
I recall our early discussions. In fact, I don't know what you call it, but I call it confetti. And you have over the years populated the atmosphere of your paintings with these strips that I like. They're fascinating because they look like strips of paper that are 2 inches long and 1 inch wide, or 3/4 of an inch wide, and they're falling or populating the air in the scenery. And I think we own one of the early ones where confetti was showing up. That would be the parade. Tell us about that as a visual construct. Give us some sense of that, because it's become an important, just looking at the work behind you, it's become one of your signatures, I think.
That's so interesting. I hadn't thought of that as confetti in these. Sorry, I've got something in my throat. That parade painting was literally confetti. It was a painting of a parade on a street scene, and I was imagining this confetti kind of filling the air. And it felt like a way to kind of balance out parts of the painting or create kind of movement from one area to another.
Sure.
It's sort of an easy way to add some color and movement and stuff. And then I guess in these current paintings, I'm just painting in a way that's kind of fun to think about it as confetti. I hadn't, that there's, I'm just painting in this way that's kind of open. So there's bits of what was painted underneath showing through. And some of those little bits are kind of bright. And again, kind of just move our eye around the space of the painting.
The bits, call them bits, call them bits, call them confetti.
I like confetti.
They're
like looking at it behind me. And in this one, I actually did this like neon acrylic underpainting. So there's the little bits that are showing through are like, quite bright and kind of confetti-like. That's true.
Yeah, it's a wonderful motif. I hope you continue to do it. But in your current work, as I have studied it, you appear to be continuing to experiment with both group settings, group figural get-togethers, like I said, weddings and parades and the like, garden scenes, people around pools, this sort of thing. But in addition to that, you've done some straight, I don't know what I've called it in my own head, I've called them interior landscapes, where they tend to be atmospheric paintings of interiors. Talk about that strain of your work for a minute, if you would.
Which the groups or just the interior parts?
Well, you've done a series of paintings that have no figures, but they're very atmospheric renderings of spaces.
Those spaces. Yeah. Where there's some where the figures are kind of smaller in the space, which has also been kind of fun, where it's kind of dominated by the space. It feels like they're spaces that are like built by the figures that were there, whether we're seeing the figures or not. They're kind of, created. You get to like get these glimpses of who the inhabitants might be, who've created these spaces. There's often these kind of messy bits of stuff in the painting that's kind of piled up or accumulated. And they're just kind of beautiful spaces to paint, I guess. Those ones are done from observation, in spaces that I've been staying in and living in and getting to kind of take advantage of the architectural structure and the kind of movement from room. The kind of different rooms can create these different kind of spaces. Like we could imagine almost different time periods happening in different rooms. So it just feels like there's kind of a lot to play with in those scenes, I guess.
I agree with you. It's fascinating to me because I've always been of the opinion that some of our spirit inhabits the spaces that we spend a lot of time in. And it's always interesting to me that people like to look at and enshrine spaces of significant people after they die. And so there's a wonderful photograph of Albert Einstein's office at the Princeton Advanced Research Studies Institute at Princeton, taken the same day he died, and there's piles of stuff everywhere, and this pipe kind of tilted over in this ashtray and this sort of thing. And you feel like you're getting a glimpse into someone's soul when you look at that. And some of your paintings seem to try and capture that fourth dimension, that spiritual dimension that space acquires.
Yeah, it makes me think about, on a trip to the Netherlands, I got to visit Rembrandt's house and then Rubens' house and studio, and it's really I don't know, it feels kind of magical to get to walk through these spaces that people were living and working in.
Well, when you get to Ireland, the National Museum of Ireland, after Francis Bacon died, the National Museum of Ireland went to his studio, photographed everything forensically, numbered everything in the space, and then built an architecturally identical space in the National Irish Museum. And they have two windows from at right angles to each other where you can look into this space and see it as it existed when Francis Bacon died. And you can kind of feel like his spirit occupies that space somehow. Let me also say, Francis was not a particularly regimented person when it came to things. So there is no spot on the floor that's not covered with magazines or half-empty paint tubes or brushes in piles, magazines that are 20 years old and this sort of thing. But it is interesting how space acquires a spiritual dimension.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Now, what about you? You are now not just someone who seeks the influence of artists of history, but you're an influencer in your own right. How does it feel? How does that feel for you? People actually look at your work and say, she's my inspiration. How does it feel?
I know, that feels very strange. A friend of mine actually was he just sent me a message that he was teaching at a program for a couple of weeks, and he would ask everybody what their influence was, and like 3 of them said me, and I was just like, I don't know, it's funny, but also it's cool. It's really wonderful that I don't know, we're all part of this kind of lineage of making paintings. And I'm still looking at people who are kind of the generation above me, and now people are looking at my work too. It's just kind of how it goes.
So who would be influences of the generation ahead of you that you would call out as important in helping you shape your own vision?
Oh, I really love like Anne Gale, and Susan Lickman, Susan Jane Wolpe, Catherine Kehoe. Feel like they're all kind of women who are just like one generation older than me, whose work I really, really admire. And then people like Cecily Brown and Jenny Saville. I'm kind of looking at both people who've kind of made it to super big, and other people who are just like really solid painters whose work I love.
You talk about all those people. Anne Gale is a great painter. I have never understood why she doesn't get 7 figures for some of that wonderful stuff she does. Those portraits with all that impasto and they have a sculptural or a tactile feel to them. A wonderful painting.
She's the real deal. Those paintings are so solid. They're really.
I think she's a faculty member at the University of Washington, isn't she?
Yep, that's right.
So all those disparaging things I said about university art departments, if Anne Gale's on the faculty, I take it back.
Exactly. There's lots of really solid. Yeah, and there's different programs like Eve Mansdorf is another painter I really love. She teaches in Indiana. There's all sorts of programs. There's some really great painters at the, in Boston who are teaching at the universities there. There's, and in Philadelphia, there's a whole range. But
well, I wish that there were a way that I could push a button and make every painter whose work is good successful in the monetary sense. It's very frustrating to me as a collector that big art seems a bit fickle. Why does the fickle crown of fate fall on one artist's head and not on another's? Have you ever wondered about that?
Yeah, for sure. It seems like you kind of you can only do your part. Like you show up and you make as good of paintings as you can, and you like do some outreach stuff, and then it just feels like you don't have very much control over what happens beyond that. And it's just amazing to see some painters who are just reaching these kind of stratospheric heights of success, and others who are not making a living. And I think that it's for the most part really well deserved for the people who are having that success, but there's certainly other people who are also really strong, doing really strong work.
I never seek to take success away from anyone.
Yeah.
But that doesn't prevent one from asking the question, why isn't this person who has got this particular style or capability, why isn't this person experiencing the same degree of success and acceptance and this sort of thing? And I confess.
And that's the part that you just don't have, as the painter, I think you just don't have that much control over it. It's just
no, do the best.
And maybe there are some people who are like particularly good at the networking side of things. I was chatting with one artist out in New York whose work I don't like that much, but she's really good at like going on cruises with billionaires and doing cocaine and having a great time, and is having a lot of success. And I think she's there's a little bit of both. That's one way to do it. But but I don't think she's going to survive history. I don't think she's going to be making the books. I think it's people like, I don't know, and I just admire so much painters like Anne Gale or something who are just doing really solid work over many years. And yeah.
Talk to me about size. Your work seems to have been on a trajectory that is largely moving in the direction of monumentality. And I get into these discussions as a collector. I like big, and my co-curator, Dr. Schmidt, and I love to collect big. Bigger is better for us, keeping in mind that we're giving our collection to museums that have 40-foot walls and 30-foot ceilings and so forth. Talk to us about your attitude towards size, because clearly the triptych behind it looks like a triptych.
The one behind me is actually, this is just the bottom of the painting. The other half of it is on the other wall here. It's 18 feet high by 20 feet wide, which is just really absurd. So these are the bottom half. And this is the first time I've ever made larger than life figures. So they really are kind of monumental for the first time. Up until now, like I have been getting bigger and bigger, but it's basically everything has been kind of life-sized. And if I'm doing a group of 20 figures and they're all kind of life-sized, then the painting becomes, 12 feet or 9 feet, they become kind of big. And if I'm painting, a sandwich, then it's, maybe 16 inches, it's like a sandwich on a table and it's a life-size sandwich. So that has been kind of how I've been getting bigger and bigger up until now, is making these complicated big group scenes where I feel like if I'm painting life-size, the figures feel just embodied in a different way. I'm engaging with it as a painter in a really different way than if I'm working really kind of delicate and fine. And seeing it more just as a kind of composition. If it's really small, I think you're kind of when you're kind of working at a scale where you're kind of enveloped by the whole painting, the figures take on this like bodily presence. I love that in a Rubens or something, where you kind of get that sense of these big kind of fully embodied figures there.
So has the
so this one behind me is this one behind me is just absurd though.
so with a painting like that, is it pre-sold or how does that work? Because monumentality does affect the market, right?
Yeah, this one is it's not pre-sold. There was a possible commission for this one, and I got so excited about the idea that I decided I just wanted to make it, one way or another. And that company is still they haven't made any decisions about it, and I'm just making my now. So that probably is not going to happen, but hopefully it'll find a home. I think I feel more confident now that I'll be able to, find a place for it.
Well, it's 18 feet high and 20 feet wide. It looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels behind you.
It's actually, so it's 5 panels total. So there's 3 panels behind me and then 2 up above. So
oh my,
it's very, very large.
I think it sounds cool. I want to see the other part of it.
Yeah, I could send you some pictures or something.
Please do. I'm always interested. But in the shift from smaller work to larger, have you found that it has affected your market at all? Your ability to sell the work, for example?
So far, all the big paintings have sold. So I think that has emboldened me to keep making bigger ones. And maybe I'm just sort of pushing, okay, well, we'll see what happens if I make an 18-foot tall painting. And at some point, if these were to be piling up, I think I would be dissuaded from making more of them. I've kind of been making one really kind of large painting at a time. Each one takes about 2 years to do. So I'll be kind of working on one big project and then have some smaller paintings going at the same time. And then,
it's very exciting. It's very exciting, and love the work. It's terrific. You've graciously agreed to serve as a juror for the Bennett Prize 3.0, which has the stated objective of propelling the careers of women figurative realist painters. One of the ways in which the prize does that is it funds a traveling exhibition of both the finalist work at the end of the 2-year period when she receives the prize funds, as well as a exemplary work of the finalists. I'm interested in whether or not you agree with the premise of the Bennett Prize, which is, we have said we think women have not been fully embraced by big art, and one of the things that the prize seeks to do is to right that inequity. I'd be interested in some of your own thoughts on gender equality or inequality in the visual arts in particular.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think it feels, more stark right now with the recent Dobbs decision. It just feels like we're not marching slowly towards, progress here, that we have to like really be fighting for it. I just so appreciate what you guys are doing to help try and make that happen. It just feels, it feels crazy to me at this point that major museums don't have, we can't do anything about the past, but that, in terms of shows of contemporary painters, like there's no reason that it shouldn't be 50% women being exhibited, and that's really far from the case. And with galleries and a galleries lineup, yeah, it just feels
it doesn't feel right. We were delighted, the doc and I recently made a contribution to the Muskegon Museum of Art, which is the host museum for the Bennett Prize show. And they agreed to dedicate a gallery to women artists, which I think what was interesting was when we were conceptualizing this, we could only find 5 museums worldwide that had galleries or subparts dedicated to women. And we were quite shocked at that. The Elizabeth Sackler gallery or wing at Brooklyn is probably the only really prominent place in the United States, and now Muskegon. So this is a very modest, there's not enough effort being made, I don't believe, to promote women in the visual arts. And we think it's important to take action to prevent that. Have you experienced some of that? Discrimination is about the only word that really fits it correctly. In the course of your career, have you had some of that? Have you felt it?
I haven't been aware of that directly, I guess. I think I'm just seeing it, in the numbers, in the world in general. I think I'm just seeing the disparity that's happening, but I haven't had a kind of direct experience of that for sure. I mean, I guess I've had some weird interactions with gallerists and stuff where I felt like, yeah, I think you can't, that maybe is part of it, is you can't quite tell, like, boy, I feel like they were kind of looking me up and down in a weird way. Like, what was that about? So I've had some strange experiences like that, but, nothing too blatant, or, you don't know why you don't get, why you're not being promoted by a gallery, or why a gallery says no.
Well, you always ask yourself when you walk out of the job interview why you didn't get the job. What was it? And this is it's the same idea, I think, when you present your portfolio to a gallery and they say thanks, good luck.
Yeah, but it seems really helpful what you guys are doing, and it also feels just important that, I don't know, that they're not just be kind of spaces that are specifically dedicated to women, but that, like, when a group show is happening, like there was a show at the Denver Art Museum a few years ago of women abstractionists, and it was a great show, but it's like, why isn't every show of abstract paintings 50% women? Like there's like Joan Mitchell, Lee Krasner, they're rock stars, they're fantastic. It should just be the standard that those are included in all of it shouldn't be like the women abstract expressionists and then the just general abstract expressionists. It should just, and I think that's where like having a separate space dedicated to women artists, like it's not the only solution, because we're not like a subgroup of people, we're just half of the population.
Well, it's an interesting problem, because by definition, anytime you say we're going to celebrate X and you use an identity as the defining characteristic of the universe of X. If the universe is of people and the sub-universe is some identity factor, by definition, when you limit it like that, you're creating a ghetto.
Yeah, where it ends up feeling like, that there's this other thing that's like the standard thing, and we're this kind of subgroup ghetto space, right?
Right, and ultimately the goal would be to not have a ghetto, but to have true equality, which would be everybody. Inclusion implies a lot, particularly since women make up 51% of the world's population. And yet, the Guerrilla Girls are still right. The number of women represented in galleries, museums, shows, group shows, auction house results, in every metric, the women are not at parity. And I think that's a cause for alarm. And frankly, it's no less true with African American painters, or, once you start down, there all these subgroups that deserve better and don't get it. And so I would like to think that identifying a subspace like this is a transitional effort. And ultimately, there will come a time when somebody would say, gosh, that's silly. Why do we need to do that? But I don't think we're there quite yet.
It feels like we're really, really far from there, which is what's so upsetting right now. Yeah.
So as you come to the Bennett Prize, do you have any expectations as you think about being a judge for this contest?
Oh, I'm guessing that there will be a lot of really strong work. There's so many strong painters out there right now, so I'm excited to see what people are submitting. And there's also so many, like, I don't know, people who've been doing this, like, I don't know who would qualify for this prize, who've been just like painting for 40 years and are such strong painters, and they just haven't gotten the recognition. So both like up and comers, young, really ambitious painters who are doing really great work, and then people who just haven't gotten the recognition that they deserve. So just seems like there's a big pool to draw from for it.
Well, and we have taken the view that we don't care whether you're a new painter or an old one, or you've been painting for 40 years or for 4 months. If your goal is to be a professional artist, a full-time professional artist, and you're seeking an opportunity to do that, we welcome those who are women or identify as women to join the party and be part of the fun. We've had about 700 entries for both of the first 2 iterations. We expect there might well be more this time, because now, I got kicked out of a lot of places when I showed up trying to explain what we were trying to do, and there was no prize, right?
Yeah, no, you would think that it would kind of gain in recognition as it kind of goes along. Yeah, that's cool.
So when you think about judging an art contest like the Bennett Prize, what are you going to look for? What are the things you want to see?
Strong paintings. It's hard to I love paintings of all different genres and types. Like we were just spending this month in Italy, and I just I see all of paintings from all these different eras, and there's just something that makes a painting strong, and it doesn't matter like what kind of style it's done in or something. But I guess I'll be looking for kind of compositions that are really working. Like I think I'm coming less from a kind of conceptual background. I'm looking for this kind of visual impact of the work. So work that has a kind of works together as a whole, that is like internally consistent and has this kind of strong composition, and has it looks like the artist is exploring something kind of particular to them that they're really interested in, that they have like a thing that they're trying to figure out in the paintings. Yeah.
I call it oomph. People ask me what I look for in paintings, and the answer is oomph. And somebody says, well, how would you define oomph? And I define oomph as that quality in a painting which insists that you look at it.
Yeah, I like that.
So you and
it's just kind of crazy to me that like a Morandi can have that same oomph as like a Velasquez or something, right? Like there's just this, it's like, there's something really ineffable about that.
Ineffable is a wonderful word. We think about, Mobile Gas Station by Edward Hopper, or Portrait of Dora Maar by Picasso. I'm trying to think of some wonderful paintings. The women, take any of Alice Neal's portraits and you say, that's got oomph. And so we're going to be, for those of you who are eligible for the Bennett Prize, we're looking for oomph, aren't we? All right. I always like to ask this question at the end of one of these engaging, wonderful interviews, and that is, what haven't I asked you that you wish I had?
I don't know if I have anything like right on my mind right now. I feel like we covered some good stuff.
What would you like to say to the audience? You have 1 or 2 minutes here to say anything you'd like to the people watching. What would you like to say? The listeners and the watchers, what would you like to say to them?
Yeah, just keep showing up and keep making stuff. I think that sometimes people wonder if art matters or something. And I think if we're pursuing art, we know that it, like, you know that great art matters to you. Like that, at least for me, like looking at historic paintings, like these great paintings of history, they like give me faith in humanity. They make like being alive feel worth it. They kind of show us the best side of ourselves and what's possible. And so I don't know if the paintings that I'm making matter, but I know that art matters, and that getting to be part of that like really matters. And that feels just, I don't know, it feels worth it to keep showing up and doing that.
Let me say,
despite it all,
let me just say, I think your work matters, and I think you are an extraordinary inspiration to painters, men and women all over. And you certainly have an evolution that is beautiful and ongoing. And so I continue to watch your work with a combination of pride and envy, I confess. So let's keep going, right? That's kind of the message. Let's keep going, and I urge you to do that. And we look forward to welcoming more of your work into the Bennett collection, and working side by side with you on the jury of Bennett Prize 3.
Nice. It'll be nice to meet you in person and get to actually look at the paintings in person. There's nothing quite like actually looking at things in the flesh.
Yeah, absolutely. Zoe Frank, thank you for a fascinating hour. As we wrap up, let me say that the doc and I most sincerely look forward to being with you at the opening of the Bennett Prize exhibition at the Muskegon Museum of Art in May of 2023. And I personally very much look forward to working with you in judging the Bennett Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest has been the well-known figurative realist painter, Zoe Frank. Just as a reminder, here are some important dates. The call for entries for the Bennett Prize closes on October 7th, 2022. The top 10 finalists will be announced in a press release that will issue on November 29th of 2022. And the opening and announcement of the winners will occur at the Muskegon Museum of Art in Muskegon, Michigan on May 18th of 2023. The exhibition of the work of the 3.0 finalists and the solo exhibition of the 2021 winner, Ayana Ross, will be on view from May 19th to September 10th, 2023, and will then travel the country for 2 years. Again, if you're an eligible woman painter, please consider becoming a contestant for the Bennett Prize 3.0, the call for entries for which is open now. The complete rules for entry are available at www.thebennetprize.org. Thanks, everybody. So long.